Hi everyone, can we hear me? Yes. Yeah. All right, big voice today. Thanks everyone for coming out today. It's an amazing turnout. I believe about 10 minutes to talk to you today about what you can do in your own space to help birds. I run the Urban Birds program for Birdlife, and that's exactly what we do. We're all about the birds that live where people live and what action you can take in your own space to create a better and safer place for birdlife to be living in. So I'm going to cover off on a few things. I won't be able to get through anything. This is usually a talk that takes me about half an hour, 45 minutes, doing it in 10. We're going to cover off on the importance of habitat, providing food for birds, some pitfalls and some ways to do it responsibly, putting water out for birds, and also how you can monitor birds in your garden, because that helps us understand what's going on, particularly in this very scary post-fire world. We really need to understand where our bird life is going to and what features we can provide that are helping them. By far and away, the best thing you can do is to put plants in the ground for birds. Birds are going to be foraging naturally, thank goodness. They're going to be seeking shelter, and they're going to be searching for nesting sites a bit later in the year. Okay, most birds are not breeding now, but just come to the end of winter, they're going to be looking for resources. So the sooner you can get plants in the ground, the better. We're just coming out of the heat of summer, so as it starts to cool down a bit, get some plants in. We always suggest locally native plants if you can get a hold of them. There's a great bird attracting plants of the Blue Mountains flyer that you can get just over here at table 1. So go and grab that. That has some suggestions for some great bird attracting plants that are not just your typically marketed bird friendly plants. Usually when we think of those, we get told to go and get some bottlebrush or some hybrid grevilleas, some robin gordons and some moonlights. Lovely plants, beautiful flowers. They cause a bit of a problem because they tend to attract those birds that are doing really well anyway and are kind of the bullies of the bird world. Okay? They're your noisy miners. Are we rating them up or down? So noisy miners, aggressive honey eater. They love chasing away anything else from their patch. And we know that if you are smaller than a noisy miner, you really struggle to coexist with them. So if you put lots of nectar-rich plants in your garden, you're basically putting a big bowl of sugar out year-round that's going to attract those large aggressive species. Noisy miners, rainbow lorikeets, you might also get some wattle birds as well that can be pretty narky when they're feeding and will chase away other birds. So it's a good idea to try and get a balance of things in your garden. So insect attracting plants, dense prickly plants, things like hakeas, there's some great suggestions in here. I'm not just going to run through a list for you. But think about putting in things from here down. The shrub layer is what we tend to remove from our gardens, and it's what needs to go back in to create a really good habitat for particularly our smaller birds. It's going to provide them with lots of shelter, lots of places to hide, particularly if they're getting chased by noisy miners, or the dog, or the kids. It's going to provide them with a nice little escape route. So have a look around, grab some of the flyers and think about what plants you can put in your garden. Of course, be aware of fire risk. So we want to be making sure we're not creating ladders of vegetation that go straight up into the canopy, not having plants right next to the house, trees overhanging. Of course, approaching this sensibly, but thinking about sharing our garden with our bird life. The other thing that people love to do for birds is to put food out. Does anybody want to out themselves as feeding birds? I'm not going to disparage you by any stretch. If you do it, fine. Yeah, great, excellent. Fruit, yep. Seed? Yeah. Before the cats, yes. If you've got cats around, then it's they can be a bit of a magnet for the cats. So if you are going to put food out, and a lot of people, that's one thing they like to do post an event like this, is to provide some supplementary food. You absolutely can. You just need to think about how you do it carefully, because it is a big responsibility. You are putting out food that could potentially harm the birds if it's the wrong stuff. It could spread disease, it could cause malnutrition. But it is a wonderful way to feel connected to wildlife and to be contributing and sustaining them through a really, really awful summer. So if you are going to put some food out for birds, Think about that responsibility that you've got and make sure you're aware of the negative consequences of what you could be doing. So that includes things like spreading disease. It is so important if you put food out that you are really hygienic about it. So put your feeders out, put the food in, leave it for an hour or so. Don't put food out that's around all day. The birds, they will look at you like you are the most evil creature ever once you take it away. They will be fine, okay? Don't fall for the pitiful looks. It's all an act, okay? So make sure once you've cleaned the food up, you take the dish in, you give it a good brush off, because there'll often be, all sorts of things that are not necessarily food left around there as well. Give it a clean off, give it a wash with some hot soapy water. Disinfectant, okay? So a dilute bleach solution or something, give it a good scrub. That way you're getting rid of any potential diseases that are around there or any bad food that's been left behind. Leave it out in the sun to dry, and then the next day or a couple of days down the track, fill it up again. Okay, so hygiene is massive, particularly if you've got parrots coming into your feeders, which a lot of people do. So beak and feather disease is the one that results in those mangy looking cockatoos, the ones that look really old and haggard. Okay, they're usually quite young birds, despite what they look like. That disease can be spread around feeders because you're bringing lots of birds close together. So make sure that you're keeping things very, very clean. If you do have those mangy birds around, make sure you let a wildlife rescue group know. Cease feeding. You don't want to be feeding those guys and bringing them in and potentially spreading disease. So keep it really clean and feed appropriate foods. So I've got a little flyer here, which is down the back, and it's got a table of different things that you can feed for birds. As I said, 10 minutes, I'm not going to go through it all, but think about avoiding bread, even for ducks. Bread's just a filler. It doesn't give them any nutrition. It just takes up space in their tummies that are better fed with other things. If it's a long-term issue and they're being fed a lot of it, it can cause some serious diseases down the track as well. The other one, which is really controversial and not many people know, is don't feed them mince. Okay? Don't feed carnivorous birds mince. The meat that we feed birds, 5 minutes? All right, cool. So the meat that we feed birds is just meat. It's what we will go and get down at the butchers and eat ourselves a lot of the time. When a carnivorous bird finds some prey in your garden, they're eating the whole thing. They're getting some bone, they're getting some fur or some scales, some feathers. They're ingesting a whole lot of things. They're getting a much more well-rounded diet than what they would get from just getting some meat from you. So the extra downside with mince is it's quite sticky and goopy, yeah? So it gets stuck. It can get stuck in beaks and trapped, and then it can, if they don't get rid of it, can lead to bacterial infections and things. So it can be particularly nasty if things go bad with it. So if you are feeding meat to carnivorous birds, think about supplementing with a calcium supplement. So you can get something called insectivore mix, basically. Sprinkle a bit of that on. Otherwise, we think that the other alternative for meat-eating birds is dog food. That seems to be that there's no great carnivorous bird diet that we can replicate ourselves yet, but dog food seems to be about the closest. So you can soak a little bit of kibble, you can get a bit of dog roll and feed that.
What about cat food?
Cat food, I think, is a bit higher in protein. So I think dog food is the best suggestion. If you are going to feed birds, there are some better alternatives. So, of course, seed mixes, nectar mixes that you can get from pet supply places. They tend to go bad pretty quickly, so make sure you're only feeding a small amount and you're cleaning it up really quickly so it doesn't ferment and go yucky. Fruit as well, there are a few different options. Just make sure that you are doing it really cleanly, so you're cleaning up really well. You're being really observant about what you feed. If you're just feeding the cockies that are doing really well anyway and have got lots of food, they're feeding down on your lawn and they're okay, they're fine. Think about a quiet space in your yard if you're really thinking that some of those smaller birds might need a little bit of food, might need a little bit of help. A quiet space where they can come and feed quietly rather than being something for you because you're encouraging birds to come up close. Only those really confident guys are going to be the ones that are going to come up to you. So a quiet area of your yard is a great thing. Vary the time of day that you feed and think about it as a treat. Okay, it's a treat for you because we take a great deal of pleasure from feeding birds. I get it. I've taken my daughter down to feed peas to the ducks. She loves it. It's a great way to feel connected to nature and to do some good, but we just need to be aware of what can go wrong because we do this for the right reasons. So think about appropriate food infrequently and making sure that we keep everything really clean. As I said, visit me down the back and get a flyer. It's got more detail on it. Likewise, water for birds is fantastic. The more water you can put out, the better, especially in summer. Who's got a bird bath? Great. Several? Wonderful. Just make sure if you've got a bird bath again that you're refreshing the water. Birds are doing lots of things in there and it's not just bathing. Make sure you're keeping it clean. You don't want to let it stagnate and then you get mozzies and things breeding up. And if you have a bath that is deep or glazed, because I know if you go and buy one they're often quite slippery, make sure you put a brick, pebbles, a branch, something in there so wildlife, whether it is birds or reptiles or frogs, can get themselves out if they happen to slip. Okay? Again, I've got a Water for Wildlife brochure down the back as well, so feel free to grab that. But water is a fantastic way to help birds. We run quarterly bird surveys through the Birds in Backyards program that I run. We ask people to record 20 minutes in their garden, what they see, along with what their garden characteristics are like. This summer, we set a challenge saying we want to see if there are more birds in gardens with water provided. Well, the message about water has got out because about 90% of our people actually put water out for birds, which meant it was really hard for us to understand what impact it had because everybody was doing it. We found, though, that we tended to get the same number of species visiting, but we got more birds coming into gardens where there was water around. And that leads me on really quickly to the final thing that I would love you to do for me, and that is to tell me what you've got in your garden. Okay? As I said, we run these quarterly bird surveys. In your own space, in your own time, a 20-minute count. Most of you have probably heard about the Aussie Backyard Bird Count, which is the once-a-year annual event we run in October. Absolutely, when that comes around, do that. We also run quarterly surveys as well. So any time of the year, in your own space, go to birdsinbackyards.net, follow through the banners and things, you register for bird data, you can count the birds in your garden and you can tell us what habitat features you've got. That helps us post-fire know how our birds are going and where the refuges are, which means, in fact, we can then give some great information out to people about how to better create their gardens for birds. Come and see me down the back if you've got any information. Tables 14. The stuff with all the bird things on it. That's me. Oh, have I changed tables, have I? Okay. I'm down there. Come and see me. Have a chat about birds. I'd love to hear what you've got in your garden at the moment. Thanks very much for having me.